Hello and welcome to It Takes a Village. My name is Tuesdaé Knight and I'm the president and CEO of SAGE, San Antonio for Growth on the East Side. It Takes a Village is an intimate discussion with prominent community leaders and members. Our goal is to elevate discussions on current topics and events to keep our communities informed. So today's guest is City Census Administrator Berta Rodriguez, and Berta has succeeded, hi Berta, in promoting the importance of filling out the census in order to fill needs in our community. With the current COVID-19 pandemic occurring at the same time as the census, Berta has been an active and important advocate for ensuring that areas don't get undercounted and has succeeded in making San Antonio one of the top ranking in self-response rates. We're going to talk about that a little bit later, but in her role as the Census Administrator for the City of San Antonio, Berta serves as the primary point of contact and spokesperson for the city in all census efforts to achieve a complete and accurate count. She is responsible for working with the San Antonio Bexar County Complete Count Committee, which I am proud to be a part of, and to provide overall leadership in the planning, implementing, and evaluating a complete count strategy for the census. Now, prior to joining the city, Berta worked as a private sector consultant in consumer insights and analytics, providing clients with strategic direction in all areas of marketing, advertising, creative development, media, government relations, and public policy, and a lot of event planning, which I know has helped with what she's doing right now. So with that, Berta, a very warm welcome to you. And let's just get started with, how are you doing with all of this right now?
Well, first, thank you, Tuesdaé, for inviting me to be part of this series with you. How am I doing? You know, it's been a roller coaster ride for the last 5 months. And I think that I would venture to say I'm not alone. Been managing a lot of personal side of work. A daughter who was sent home for spring break and never went back, and did online learning for the rest of her first year of college, which to her, dislike, had to be back under mom and dad's rules. And then we have a younger daughter who's doing online learning now, husband and wife working together in the same house. It's just been an interesting time period personally, but we're grateful that we've managed through it and we're doing well. On the professional side, learning how to work with colleagues who are in different parts of the community, and still trying to make it so that it all works. But I think that overall it's been good. We've stayed productive. We stayed on top of getting a complete count, thanks to the efforts of the committee and those involved. So good in general, but I think that these days when people ask you how you're doing, that pat answer we all used to say or have right away is, oh, I'm great. Doesn't seem to come out as easily these days, but
Right.
We keep pushing forward. We're hopeful that this will pass and that we'll all have some semblance of what we had before, right? Especially the getting together. I miss the getting together.
Right. So we can sit and have our coffee together like this at least, and it just not go away completely. So I am enjoying this portion of it, but I am missing the human touch and the interaction. So I get exactly what you're talking about. So, but thank you for being here to have coffee with me this morning. And I am so looking forward to talking with you. So, but again, this is what we're doing now. This is how we're getting together. So we're gonna make the best of it.
Yeah.
So, well, I will definitely keep your daughter in my prayers, and you and your family. So, Berta, getting people to respond to the census has already been a difficult thing, right? It comes every 10 years. People aren't always so sure. So now we're throwing COVID-19 into the mix and probably making it even more difficult. How are you getting information out to people to get more responses? How are you tackling that?
Yeah, so yes, we did know based on prior census counts that there were going to be some barriers that were going to exist among certain populations of our community in getting them to self-respond. We knew there were going to be issues around language barriers, We knew there were going to be issues around the digital divide, because this is the first time in the history of the census that people can go online to fill out the census, which is a plus, right? I think that it's a plus, but not for everyone who doesn't have connectivity. And here in our community, unfortunately, we have a real problem around that has exacerbated now with the pandemic. So we knew going in what challenges we needed to face, what barriers we needed to help members of our community overcome, and we were prepared for that. We were prepared because we were going to be working with amazing stakeholders in our community, SAGE being one of them, and as you mentioned, you are a member of our Complete Count Committee, and we turned to stakeholders in our community to help us understand, how do we reach the people you serve? And so they helped us come up with outreach efforts that would involve having people come into their businesses and or organizations to use computers and the like. Well, as you mentioned, the pandemic hit, and all of that went out the door. All of our 65 organizations that were prepared and eager and ready had to rethink how to communicate with people in our community. And so we did a lot of shifting as well. We took and we invested the dollars that we had for outreach into media, and we did what I think everyone in our community did. We pivoted. The word of the year, we pivoted, and we pivoted quickly because we were right at the very start of counting people. The pandemic hit like 3 days after. I mean, it hit right when we were starting. So we had, events were canceled like 2 days before, and I was sitting there with T-shirts and buttons, and I'm like, what do I do? Right. So we pivoted. What we're doing now, Tuesdaé, is we're reaching people where they are, based on them, the inability of people to move freely throughout the community as much as we want. And so we shifted to things like we're advertising on gas pumps at the gas station. We're advertising on the back of cash register receipts at Family Dollar and Dollar General. We did over the street banners. We're using digital media quite a bit. But again, we had to figure out, where are the people? What are they doing? Where are they going? And how do we reach them? So we've had to do a lot of rethinking. How do we reach our audience? Just, I'm sure, as you have from your organization standpoint.
We've been trying to figure out how to do that ever since the beginning of this too. And the interesting part is that it always something else gets thrown in the mix, right? So even with us trying to set up, there's issues with internet, there's issues with us trying to connect. And if we're having those issues, we know other people are. So, this has just been, I think, an interesting project for all of us, right? And like you said, pivoting is what we're doing. So, I'm glad that you guys changed it up and did it that way. So, understanding that having a complete census count is important for funding. I know that, but can you explain that to our viewers of why the census is important?
Yeah, so there's two primary reasons why the census is done. Well, there's one basic reason why the census is done. So only every 10 years. So every 10 years, there's a count of the entire population. So that means everyone who's living here. And that's really important for us to communicate because there were some questions about who gets counted, who doesn't get counted early on, especially last year around summer months, when there was a possibility that an immigration question would be put into the census questionnaire. And so what we want to make sure is that everyone who lives here gets counted, because what the population data helps to determine is the political representation of a state. And so again, every 10 years and only every 10 years do the congressional seats across the entire country get reallocated. And so for us, for Texas, what that means is, because we've had such an explosive growth in population, we stand to gain an additional 3 congressional seats if we count everyone. So the flip side to that would be, if we don't get a complete count, we don't get the number of representatives that we should have in Congress. And so that's the first key aspect of the census. The second aspect of it that people may not relate to the census is that it impacts the federal funds that come to our community. And so
here to San Antonio, that directly impacts us.
Completely impacts us. Every program that is federally funded, where dollars come into our community, have at the basis population data to determine how much to provide. And so if we don't know how many children are in our community, then we won't know whether we need, childcare services, or whether we need, more funding to our elementary schools, right? And so the same thing applies to other areas. Healthcare, population data is so critical for us to know where do we need that next community health clinic, or it also directly impacts the hospital funding, which is so critical to us right now during this pandemic. So again, I think for a lot of people, population data, statistics, numbers, they're like, why? It's not that important, right? But it is, because at the end of the day, it is used to determine the federal funds that come to our community for services related to health, education, food insecurity. And if we don't have that accurate count, if we don't really understand who we are and what our needs are as a community based on population data, then we won't be able to provide adequate services, and we won't be able to ensure the success of everyone in our community around the things that they're needing. So it's very important for us.
So you mentioned a lot of things. You mentioned federal funding, you mentioned parks, healthcare, childcare. Let's talk about now again, in that things have changed. People are now taking care of other people's children. Children are at home with their tias and abuelas and grandmothers and uncles and whoever they can be at home with. So what does the count look like for them?
Okay, and so what I want to make sure to communicate is that the population count is a count of households, the count of individuals that live in a household. And this is very important to us, as you mentioned, especially right now where families maybe have had to come together and live under one household, or, grandparents taking care of grandchildren. So it's really important that as people fill out their census, that they understand that it is for the household. And so if you have two families that have had to, or have been living together before the pandemic, they would fill out one census form for everyone living there. It doesn't matter if they're, you own the home or you are living there. If you live in a household, you get counted. The same thing would apply, for example, within our college student population. We have a lot of college students that, room together. Well, they should all be counted under one census form. And so we really want individuals to understand that even if you are not the parent, or even if you're not the leaseholder or the mortgage holder, you still get counted within that household. And one of the areas in past census where we've seen an undercount is with children, especially under the age of 5. And when I make presentations and I make that statement, and people have asked me, well, how does anybody forget to count their children? Well, it's not that you forget, none of us are going to forget that we have little ones in our household. But what happens is there's not that communication where, let's take the grandparent example. Grandparents taking care of grandchildren say, well, they're not mine, so I better not count them. And the parent is saying, well, they're not living with me, so I better not count them. And then nobody ends up counting them. So it's not like you forget, it's that there's not clear understanding that you should count them. If they're living in your household, count them. That goes with anyone who's living in your household. If you have a tia living with you, count her. If you have your abuelos living with you, count them, right? So household count of everyone is what we want to make sure. Yeah.
So if a college student is away at college, like your daughter, would she, if she was still there, she would have counted with her roommates, but now that she's with you, you can count her at your house.
Well, and let me clarify that, because that has been a confusion, right? Even I wanted to count her here, and I work on this. Here's how it's working for college students and why it's important that they get counted where they go to school. And so remember what we talked about a while ago. Resources come to a community based on that population, right? Well, in the college towns, the population is of college students. So they use the resources in those communities. And so it's important for a college town like San Marcos, like UT, or like, other areas in our country, to understand that their population base is built primarily around a college population base. And so they should be counted where they go to school, because they are there the majority of the time. So for us, that became an easier task, because the Bureau is now going to work with the colleges and universities and ensure that the colleges and universities have provided information about college students. So if you live away at college, you get counted there. And that's important. And it was a little confusing at the beginning, but if we think about it, resources that are needed in a community are being used by those that live there, and college students live in those communities. So she had to be counted in San Marcos.
Thank you for the clarification. I know you helped a lot of people. I would have not known either.
Yeah.
So let's see. So the last census count was 10 years ago. And there's been a lot of changes in those 10 years. Social media has increased tremendously. The internet is just where everyone goes for every piece of information. And so, I think that with that, it's actually brought our country and the world together in a different way that it hadn't before. So with that, there's just a flood of information. There's also a flood of misinformation and alternative facts that get passed along through those channels. So can you please clear up some of the myths that people are hearing about what's happening with the census and anything you've heard?
Yeah, so there's a few things that we always try to make sure that people understand about the census. The first biggest misunderstanding that still exists out there is left over from what I mentioned earlier related to the citizenship question. And so last year, there was the potential that the citizenship question was going to end up in the census, and it is not on the census. We need community to understand that the census will not ask about citizenship or immigration status. So the other thing that we need to communicate to the community is there are certain things that are not going to be part of the census. And if they are, they're not census related, it's fraud. And so we want to ensure that people understand they will never be asked about banking information. They will never be asked for their social security number, and they will never be asked for a donation. And I know that might sound kind of strange, but there were earlier in the process mailings that were going to households that looked like a census form. I mean, literally, I got to see it. It looked like a census form, but on the back, at the very bottom, it asked, please make a donation, and it was a political party request. Well, those are not census related. So it's important because with the ability to communicate with masses, there are going to be occasions where information is being trying to collected that shouldn't be. And so we need, especially our elder population in the community, that we want them to understand that these things are not part of the census. But it could be any of us, right? You pick up the phone and you get a marketing call and people start asking you questions. And you're like, okay, it sounds legit. Well, some of it will be, but there will be things that are not legit. Again, citizenship question, banking information, social security, and or donations are not part of the census. And if they are, if anybody's trying to get that information from you, you just hang up, or you just, say no thank you and, move on.
So once again, no banking information, no social security, and no donations. Really, really important. So, the census of years past has been people walking around with a clipboard, going door to door and asking questions. Again, COVID. So what does that look like? Again, are there people is someone gonna knock on my door if I haven't responded? What does that look like now?
Yeah, so this definitely was the year of change for the Bureau. They added an online option for you to be able to provide your information. They also added a phone option. But you're right, there were a lot of people in our community, and we would get a lot of calls that are like, I hear the census is going, nobody's come to my house. And so the early part of the data collection, the Bureau didn't send any census takers. And that was intentional because they wanted to use these other methods. But then when the pandemic hit, then they didn't send anyone out for months. And I have an 88-year-old friend, her name is Betty. And she was waiting for somebody to come and have that clipboard and get that information for her. And so it was an education process that we had to do with our community. Now, I will say that the Bureau has begun their door-to-door campaign. And so currently in the market, as we speak, in the rain, as we speak, there is a campaign where people are going door-to-door collecting data. Now, if somebody knocks on your door, it's because you haven't responded. And it's very important to cooperate. And we're asking people, please, if a census taker comes to your door, cooperate by providing your information. However, if you do not want to, there are still those other options that we talked about. The online.
If I go online and do all of what I'm supposed to do at time, I don't even have to worry about somebody knocking on my door.
Correct. And that's really what we'd prefer, Tuesday. We'd really prefer for individuals to provide their own data. We know that if you give your own information on your own, it is better quality data because you know your household better than anyone, right? And not that you wouldn't give all the information, but if somebody's knocking at your door at dinner time and you're trying to rush through getting that information to them, it may not be as complete. Or somebody may knock on your door several times and you just don't want to open it. And that, that's a reality that we live in, right? And so if you didn't open your door and you didn't give your data and then you didn't self-respond, you didn't get counted. And that's not what we want. We do not want an undercount. So yeah, our preference is people to self-respond online or the phone. But we do know that there are some people in our community who do want to be able to have that opportunity to give their information, because it's been such a traditional way of gathering the census data. So
right, and that's all I've ever known. But I'm not going to date myself about the first one.
Oh no!
So, so earlier we talked about what the response rates were. So talk to me about what the response rates are in San Antonio and Texas, and what's going on.
Well, I will say that as a state, our response rates are about at 60%, which is not where we'd want to be this close to the end of the count. Locally, we have a little bit better response rate. We have about a 65% self-response rate. And we think that even though we still have quite a bit of work to do, that given the situation with the pandemic, given that the data collection time period was stalled and we had to regroup and we weren't able to get out as aggressively into community as we had hoped, we think that we've done well. We feel that the efforts that we've put into it, the investments that we've made, the energy that this community has put behind it, which I would be remiss if I didn't say this right now, and that is that even though the pandemic hit and even though our stakeholders had to focus on the service they provided, that did not stop a lot of our stakeholders from continuing to message the importance of the census. And it has just been so heartwarming to me, that the ownership that this community took around getting a complete count has been so evident. An amazing task was taken on by independent school districts that have been trying to figure out, how do we keep teaching our children, right? They have continued to message the census. They have continued sending robocalls, e-blasts, distributing materials with their meal distribution. So it has been, again, I would be remiss to not highlight that even as we deal with all of how to get people counted and how to deal with the things that are going on with the pandemic, people have owned the census. And so we're very excited about that. And we continue to find ways to be in community. So I think that we've done well. We've still got some work to do. And we're hopeful that the door-to-door data collection that the Bureau is currently doing will get us to that 100%, right? And so we're going to keep pushing this until the very end. And we have an end date of about September the 30th. And we want people to understand that our time is running out to get everyone counted. And if you haven't done it yet, please do so, because after the end date's here, there's no more going back. That's it. We live with that data for 10 whole years. And there's no more going back in and saying, oh, we think we missed this portion of our community, or we undercounted this portion of our community. That's it. We get one chance every 10 years, and this is it. So really want people to understand that getting counted is important, and doing it now is even more important.
Kind of like voting, right? You have one chance to vote, and then that is your voice. And if you miss it, you can't complain that you're not happy with the results, right?
That's right. And one of the things that I feel very strongly about related to the census is that this is everyone's opportunity to be seen and heard, but you have to be counted to be able to be seen and be heard. And if you're not, then as a community, we stand to lose out. As I mentioned earlier, we cheat ourselves out of federal funding, and we cheat ourselves out of fair political representation across our state and across our community. And so, we're seeing a lot of civic engagement, which is awesome. And I think that it's important for people to understand getting counted is a huge way to be civically engaged, because it is definitely a way to ensure that we are all seen, that we are all heard. But if we're not counted, that can't come to pass.
So we've heard from you how important it is, where it's going to directly affect our neighborhoods. It's going to directly affect all of these things. So why don't you remind people on how they could do it and how they can respond to the census?
Sure. And so online, people can go to my2020census.gov and fill out all the information. And it's very straightforward. You're asked about your address and who lives with you and age and so forth. Or you can call 1-844-330-2020 and speak to a live operator. And I think that's something that is really important for individuals to know, because you're not going to be put on hold. You're not going to be asked to wait and hit prompts. And no, you're going to get a live operator. Now, there's also a direct Spanish line that we really try and encourage our Spanish-speaking population to use, because again, they get a live Spanish speaker. In addition to that, the Bureau has established 12 other languages that they can assist individuals with.
12 languages.
12 languages. And in our community, we have a pretty diverse immigrant and refugee population that can benefit from that. And so, if there's an issue with not having a computer or being able to go online, calling is just as easily an opportunity to get your data into into the Census Bureau. The other thing that I want to mention about online, because I know that we do have a connectivity issue in our community. And so the digital divide is real, and we know it. But one of the things the Bureau has tried to encourage is individuals can use their telephones, their smartphones, to fill out the question online as well. And so there's a very mobile-friendly app. It's not an app, it's just the my2020census.gov takes you there, but it's mobile-friendly. And so we hope that people will take advantage of that. There's the paper form. Everyone was mailed a paper form Tuesday, everyone. If it's still sitting in your stack of bills or somewhere on top of a newspaper somewhere.
You're talking directly to me because you know where my mail goes. That's kind of sounds like it.
If we have households that still have that paper form, it's still good. Fill it out, send it back. Make sure
I got it back in March.
Yeah. So, and then at the end of the day, there's still the door knocking going on. And so there's 4 ways: the online, the telephone, the paper form, and the census takers that are coming to the door that people can still participate.
So tons of ways to respond. There's no excuse. You don't have to go anywhere. You can do it from the comfort of your home. You can use and go to your old mail stack and pick up your old one, or you can go online. So lots and lots of opportunities to do so. Is there a line where anyone can ask if there's any questions? If someone does come to their door that they don't think is real, that's asking for their social and their bank information, can they report those guys?
Yeah, so the best thing would be to call the number, the 844-330-2020, because you can ask about the census takers coming to your door, but you can also fill out your census while you're calling, because they can take your data. And so if you're going to call to verify, why not call, verify, and give your information at the same time? Call one number. And so we really encourage people, but if for example, and I'm glad you mentioned that, somebody coming to your door, they should present their federal badge that they're with the census. They will have a handheld device that is identified with the Federal Bureau's logo on it. And you have the opportunity to say to this individual, can you come back? I want to verify this with you. And they're asked to oblige by that. But again, if anyone's going to go to the trouble to call and verify, why not just provide your data at the same time? And then you are taken off the list immediately from having anybody come back. And so that's the other benefit of this digital age is as soon as somebody responds on their own, they're no longer on the door-to-door list. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
So if I've responded, I don't even have to worry about it.
You don't have to worry about it. Yeah.
Perfect.
So avoid the knock. Avoid the knock.
Avoid the knock. I love it. Well, Berta, this has been so wonderful talking with you. Is there anything else you want to tell our audience that we may have missed or we didn't discuss?
I think we covered it all. I just want to reiterate that getting counted and getting counted now is critical for our community's future for the next 10 years. And so everyone can play a part in shaping our future and shaping it in a way that benefits everyone who lives here. So our time is now, San Antonio and Bexar County. Get counted.
I love it. Thank you. And so important, especially now, get counted now. And I hope that everybody is looking at the 3 icons on the bottom. There are plenty of opportunities and ways to respond. And, I hope you've heard today that it is important, it's safe, and it is something that our communities need. So specifically here in San Antonio, we want to make sure that we are counted, that we have all of the people known in our city so that we can get those federal funds to help with healthcare, schools and education, and our communities. So please, please, please make sure you get out and vote, and also make sure you fill out the census. So again, Berta, thank you so much for joining us today. This is such an important conversation. I appreciate everything that you're doing and how you are trying to build up our communities, from us helping support you to get where we need to be. So thank you, Berta, for your work. And before we close, I would just like to thank all of you for watching us today and being here for It Takes a Village. It is our way of still having a conversation while socially distancing, but not physically together. So this series is a result of conversations from our community. It's a demonstration of SAGE's commitment to serve as a valuable resource to this community. The east side of San Antonio is a community that needs all of this information. We want to make sure that we get this out to you. So during these crazy times, this is how we're going to continue to get information to you. So please stay tuned. Watch our next couple of series. We've got a lot of great participants, just like Berta, and we're going to continue to get that information out to you. So please visit our website at sagesa.org or visit our newsletter that is has a plethora of information in there. So please make sure that you're keeping updated on what's going on. So until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay Eastside strong. Berta, have a great rest of your day, and we will be talking with you soon. Go out and fill out your census.
Yes.
Have a great day, everyone.